This is PJNET.TV, and this is my perspective and comments. In this video segment of My Perspective and Comments, we cover politics, society here and abroad, and the events of the day that are shaping our nation. PJNET.TV, My Perspective and Comment, coming to you with a worldview, one nation under God. Welcome to My Perspective and Comments. And we'll start out as we have over this past year, or last year actually, COVID, Wuhan virus, the China virus, COVID-19. And let's see what's been going on here when it comes to this virus. The latest update, I would say at this point, is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine put in a hold pause at this point because of blood clots. And I believe it was 6 women now, and I believe that there are others out there, but at this point we have 6. And I believe we had 1 death as a result of complications with this particular vaccine from Johnson & Johnson. We are seeing, when it comes to blood clots, we've seen that AstraZeneca has also exhibited some issues regarding blood clots. And there have been multiple countries in Europe that have put a pause on the AstraZeneca vaccine. We've seen too, Moderna also had some issues regarding in California, some allergic reactions from Moderna. So these vaccines in the rollout over the last months here, a few 2 to 3 months here, there have been some complications. And again, the latest, Johnson & Johnson has put, the FDA has put a pause regarding utilizing or using this the emergency use. And again, these vaccines are under a emergency use to get them out to the population. So we do see the brakes being put on the Johnson & Johnson at this point. Whereas again, they are still utilizing the other vaccines that have been authorized for Moderna still out there, and Pfizer is still being utilized, and those inoculations are still taking place. But there have been some concerns, and people are starting to say, okay, wait a minute here. Should we rethink the vaccines? And but at this point, Dr. Fauci is saying, look, the Johnson & Johnson, we're looking at just a couple of days to at the most weeks before they move forward or move on and get Johnson & Johnson back online. We'll see when it comes to putting it back online. Again, we'll see about that. I'd like to talk about things that have been taking place here in Congress And when it comes to Dr. Fauci, Congressman Jim Jordan had a pressing moment here this past week with the Dr. Scaregood, and he was pushing back a bit on Dr. Scaregood, as I call him, my new name for Dr. Fauci, and basically what Jim was asking the question, and here's the question. Here's the question that Congressman Jim Jordan had. When do Americans get their freedom back? And it was only 15 days to slow the curve, but that's turned into a year of lost liberties. And Dr. Fauci kind of stumbled and fumbled and, said, hey, the usual Dr. Scaregood. And, we have to kind of toe the line. And basically, we could be in this for a lot longer. And again, as Jim Jordan had pressed forth, our liberties have been stifled and lost. When do we get those back? When do we get our freedom back from this lockdown, masks, and the vaccines are out? So what's up, Dr. Scaregood? In essence, is Jim Jordan asking Dr. Fauci. And not a satisfying answer, which we haven't heard from Dr. Fauci for quite a while. Yes, we're through this. Herd immunity's here, back to normal. You're not going to hear that from Dr. Fauci. It seems like that's the conclusion that we've been getting. Some further, I'd like to talk a bit more about Congress and what's been going on there with Congress. A group of Democrats this past Thursday have launched legislation in efforts to pack the Supreme Court. They're pushing to go from 9 justices to 13. So here we go. Again, we heard this. We heard them, Pelosi and some of the Democrats, even some of the ones that were running for president in the primary there, that Democratic primary, and we've also heard Joe Biden at least put it out there that as a talking point. But here we are. A lot of things that were said leading up to this election about the concerns that Republicans had, and this is what they would do if they got power, if Biden was elected, and if the House and Senate were under Democratic control. These are some of the things that we would need to look out for. Well, we're starting to see exactly those areas of concern. They're doing what they said they were going to try and do, and here's one of them. The other one is the filibuster, and we're hearing more and more about efforts to maybe move that forward. And I guess, one of the things that really has struck me is these Democrats, at least they're following through what they promised. And I'd like to just bring to you, think back here. when Obama was in the White House, of the Obama-Biden presidency. And what did we hear coming out of Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell's mouth, leading during the Obama-Biden reign, that regime? Just give us the House, just give us the Senate, and we can really make some changes to our health care to repeal and replace Obamacare. Give us the presidency so we have all three branches of the government that will do this. Well, they got that. And unlike the promises from the Democrats when they said that they would, if they got all three branches, they're doing it. When the Republicans got all three branches of the government, guess what? Oh, the double talk and the excuses and, oh, well, we don't have a big enough majority. One excuse after another. But I'll give it to the Democrats. They pushed this and they said, you give us the power and this is what we're going to do. And guess what? They're pushing their agenda through. And it seems to be full steam ahead. And one of the things that I want to caution you is you're going to hear a lot of stuff coming out of McCarthy's mouth. You'll probably hear some things McConnell will say that sound real good. But just remember, when they were in charge, when they had majorities, they couldn't do anything. And now they're going to sound real good when they're in the majority. But the truth be known, if they had have done what they promised when Obama Biden were in charge, they had the government, and the Republicans were talking about what they were going to do if they got the majorities. They didn't follow through. At least the Democrats right now are following through on what they promised they were going to do. Pelosi and the Democrats are following through on their far left agenda. And, that's a far cry from all the promises that were being made from the Republicans when it was Obama-Biden. And once the Obama-Biden administration left, President Trump came on board and ran and won. And all of a sudden, all that talk went for naught, and we couldn't even get the signature promises of replacing Obamacare, repeal and replace. And so I just want to kind of go back and look at how the Republicans run and how they move the agenda forward, and how the Democrats run and how their agenda gets enacted. One seems to be able to get legislation and enact their agenda, but when it comes to the Republicans moving their agenda forward, there always seems to be something lacking, or they can't do it. So far difference there when it comes to that. I want to talk about what we've been seeing in the news, almost like a powder keg here with police shootings. And we've seen as of late here in Minnesota this past week the shooting of the individual there that has sparked a powder keg where the misfiring of the you can hear in the background the police, I guess, cam, and you could hear the woman police officer talking about, using a taser, and taser, and then whoops, it wasn't whoops, but I just shot him. So very troubling, and the investigation, yes, needs to go forward on what happened there. And we saw a police chief and city manager get ousted, basically. The city manager definitely, and it looks like charges are being drawn up against the police officer that shot this individual. What I want to point out is so much gets lost in if you really look at some of these cases, like who was the individual that lost their life, and were they resisting arrest? Was there a threat to the officer when it comes to who were they dealing with out there? And a lot of times the media and a lot of voices are coming up and almost makes these individuals look like choir boys. But a lot of when you dig deep, you're finding out felons, armed felons with a sheet, a pretty long sheet. Now that doesn't excuse. We know that the less lethal action was supposed to have been taken, and this was, so there was negligence there, but we need to dig in to find out exactly what happened, and was it training? How did they mistaken the gun as opposed to the taser? And really, that needs to be looked into. But I don't want us to lose track of that situation. Could have been resolved by just compliance to the officer. Now, you're going to hear people say, you can't say that, as if the individual that was shot and killed had have complied to a lawful order, he'd still be alive today. But you can't say that now. But the reality, when you look at the whole situation, he'd still be alive today if he had have complied and not ignored police orders. And again, in Minnesota, the trial for Chauvin, Derek Chauvin, it is wrapping up that trial for the killing of George Floyd, and that you probably have seen it. I mean, you've probably seen it over and over and over again with his knee on top of George Floyd. A lot of things have come out during this trial that it wasn't directly, that knee wasn't directly on his neck, and there were testimonies back and forth that it wasn't a choke out. So we'll see how that plays out, but you've already heard the Black Lives Matter Antifa crowd talking about, well, we'll be burning the place down if we don't get the verdict that we want. So get ready for unrest if and even if there is a guilty on some counts, you'll still, when it comes to Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they're still going to burn and cause mayhem. But that next week we may be seeing the a verdict or a decision on that particular trial. I'd like to have us, when we start talking about what's taken place here with shootings and what actually has gone behind the scenes when you start looking at the individuals that these police officers are dealing with. And I'd like us to take a look at something that took place this past week right here, just down the road, about half an hour away from where I live here in Syracuse, New York. The police reports have come back. There was a shooting. There was a shootout, or actually a shooting. There were, I believe, 3 young people. And when I say young people, 8, I think 3 years old to 8 years old and 11-month-old. And basically almost like a drive-by. The shots rang out from this vehicle into this van. 2 mothers and their child and cousins, I believe they were. And shots rang out. 3 children are shot. 1 fatally. The 11-month-old child is fatally shot. Well, they did some investigations and they have arrested and charged an individual right now for that shooting and that alleged murder that took place. A 23-year-old is facing the charges in that shooting. And when you start looking at the individual that committed this crime, and it seems to always happen, and the conclusion always seems to come to the same place, especially in New York. Out on parole and a rap sheet a mile long. And this 23-year-old, a lot of history that you'll never hear, because it was back in juvenile and they've sealed the records. But from what has been reported, not good. As a matter of fact, this 23-year-old, I guess 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, was in another situation where he shot somebody in the head and was going to be brought up on charges on that score, but the person that he shot dropped the charges. So, again, in New York, this new bail situation, appearance tickets for stuff like this. I mean, actually letting these shooters out. And with what we're seeing across the nation, where they're letting people out of prison because of COVID, we're actually seeing hardened felons being let out into the streets. And then people wonder why our cities, the homicide rates are going sky high, because they're letting hardened criminals out. And what's the result? We're seeing the in our cities right now, the murder rates going up, and this is what we're facing. So it's very disturbing what we're seeing. And I haven't even talked about what's gone on in the southern border, and Joe Biden falling down on the job when it comes to sending and having a deterrent to keep illegal the illegal invasion that's coming in from the southern border into our country. But right now it looks like finally there's been enough pressure, and people in our country and around the world are seeing that there's definitely a crisis at the border. And now Biden's talking about maybe starting up construction and finishing areas of the wall, and working with Mexico, and I believe Honduras. He sent a representative out there to put back into place those deterrents that President Trump had worked with these countries to say, look, we need to, from your end, stop the flow. And President Trump had gotten a situation there with these other countries, and they were actually putting the brakes on to this flood invasion that was being attempted under President Trump. But he was able to work with these other countries, Mexico, Honduras, I believe Guatemala. He was also had some relationships there to try and stem what was going on there. So Biden, I believe, is now finally realizing, yes, he's got to do something. He has a problem, and he's finally going back and saying, well, yeah, I guess we should finish the wall, or at least build up the wall where we have a gaping hole where they're actually coming through, and what's happening there on the wall. We're seeing just human trafficking, and drugs, and gang members, and even we're seeing potential terrorists from other countries coming on in, and very concerning right now. And we'll see how far, how he scrambles to try and recover and stop the crisis that's at the border. So we'll keep you abreast of that next week on have they started to stem the tide of this illegal migration that we're seeing at the southern border. I'd like to just I've got a couple of videos that I want to bring up right now, and it has to do with, we've heard a lot about the accusation from these Democrats when it comes to Georgia and the law of voter integrity, and finally putting in place, bringing the law back to where it was. And actually they've expanded some areas where that have extended in some cases the voting, but putting teeth into knowing who's voting, and not just leave it up to guesswork, but to really bring integrity back to Georgia when it comes to voter integrity in the voting for presidential elections. And as soon as that happened, you heard the outcry, and now it's racist, and Biden had started that ball rolling along with Schumer and Pelosi, the cry of the Jim Crow. And I've got some videos here that I wanted to bring forth. We have Tucker Carlson bring in a little history when it comes to Jim Crow, and what party was really all about racism and Jim Crow. And we're going to hear from Dr. Ben Carson also when it comes regarding Jim Crow and Jim Crow laws. So let's set back here and take a look at what, as they discuss racists and Jim Crow laws here in these videos here. Take a watch.